All right, welcome back to another episode of the Friction Log. And this week, Cesar, esteemed partner, is on, and I'm excited about this one. This is going to be a fun one because I actually have so many questions about this. So we'll talk about it in a minute. It's about the Postman conference, which Cesar went to. And by the way, I am a little jealous of the hat. The hat's cool. As someone who is follically challenged, I have to have hats. I need hats. And
Yeah,
so that's a cool hat. And so I assume you got that at the Postman conference.
correct. By listening to, if I remember correctly, it was Postman Insights, which was one of the modules that they were giving you stuff. But yeah, the hat is the favorite thing. I also got a hoodie. I mean, you get a bunch of swag, but yes, the hat is awesome. I like the little white bezel
Yeah,
here. I
sharp.
think it's cool. Yeah.
It's very sharp, very sharp. So I was in a meeting and like ever since the beginning of time, I've watched WWDC at Apple events because, original iPhone, original developer app store and developer tools. And I missed today. Did you happen to watch the Apple event today?
It's just, yes, I did. Kind of like, it was interesting because it was at 7 a.m. my time, which is usually
Weird.
like,
Yeah, it's a weird
yeah,
time.
it was just weird. But I did new iPad Pros, new iPad Airs, super thin. I see a bunch of people commenting around like how light it is and how amazing. New processor M4, which I think they just introduced M3 like 6 months ago. So at this point, I don't think anybody can really guess what's
Yeah.
the cadence.
Yeah.
So
It's confusing. Apple's out of control with that stuff. It used to be so easy to understand. And I don't know if you've seen it. So they launched the new Apple Pencil.
yes,
And
I saw that.
and if you go to macrumors.com and you look at like which one should I buy? There's like four different ones. Obviously, there's the older ones. Um, but there's a matrix on which one you should buy. And it is so stinking confusing on which one you should buy depending on your iPad. And it turns out my M1 iPad that I brought, when did that come out? 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half. I don't know. It turns out the new Apple Pencil with the haptic feedback and all that isn't compatible with that. Like, what in the world? You have to have the M4 iPad for that? That really actually kind of makes me mad.
It's the iPad lineup all last year was very confusing. I think my iPad, I do have a Pro, but it comes from like 2020. So it doesn't even have the M1 processor. It was before that. So
Mhm.
I am
Yeah.
kind of like in the market, but at the same time, so I have thoughts, right? Like it seems like the iPad is still the most entertaining hardware piece for the Apple team that works on hardware. Like they're really pushing the boundaries there. So that's pretty cool, right? Like it's a lot of new stuff and weight and processors and whatnot.
Right.
Um, I don't think they did any mention about battery life, which my
10
assumption is like
hours. It's just like
probably
the
the
others.
same.
It's 10 hours. Yep. It's the same.
Okay. So all right, now the iPad lineup makes a lot of sense, but now the pencil is very confusing, as you mentioned. And I think my biggest kind of like stopper to actually go and impulse buy is one, I'm not going to be here next week to pick it up. But two is the software story, right? Like it's such a powerful device and it's still very limited, especially for development. I don't use Final Cut Pro or whatever pro apps for creators they have. Like
Right.
it's just the software, the lack of file system, if you can call the Files app a file system. Like there's like that's the story. I have no real justification to really buy one, other than watching a few shows when I'm traveling and a pretty awesome OLED screen. So anyhow, we'll
Yep.
see how long that lasts. But that was my three,
Yeah.
4 points about it.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I would love, so I think the MacBook Air that they have is the best MacBook they've ever made. And it doesn't have as much power as like, if I'm running Docker and a bunch of stuff and like, I get it, it doesn't have the RAM and stuff that you need, but it's an amazing device. And I feel like the iPad is like almost like there with it. And it's like, could you guys just make an iPad that's a MacBook Air and I can do the touchscreen and then we'll put it on my desk and plug it in and then it's a MacBook. Like Ubuntu tried that, if you remember, with their mobile phone. And then Samsung has that concept. It's not the same thing, but the
Yeah.
concept with their mobile device. I just wish iPad OS, it was Mac OS, and then it would be great.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just so close, but at the same time, it's like, it's not that. It's not what I would usually use. There it was an interesting. It was one mention that they did when we were talking about the magic keyword, which now has an escape key, and that's awesome, right? But they talk about like something about like it almost feels like a Mac experience or like when you're on a MacBook. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. But I mean, we're not going to see anything software related until WWDC.
Yeah.
So we will wait, and I'll probably wait until then to figure out like if I really want to. If they do come up with a way for us to run macOS, I might push it that way because I agree with you. Like it's like the MacBook Air, but like with better, I don't know, trade-offs, I would say for
Sure.
like the MacBook Air doesn't have the OLED screen. Like there is a little bit of trade-offs in there, but if they don't, then I might go with just 11-inch and try to use it as my leisure device, reading, watching stuff, and then just stay with that. So we will see. It's up to Apple. It's not my decision to make.
Yeah. Right. Cool. All right. Well, let's jump into Postman here. So you went to, it's just, I kind of laugh every time I see it and hear it, but you went to PostCon.
Yes.
And
And it's not a conference where I'm gonna trick you into something.
yeah, this is funny to me, right? Because Postman, and for people who don't know what Postman is, Postman, how I know Postman personally, I think it's grown beyond what I know. But Postman, was basically an API client. So you would set
It
it
was
up.
not. It was not even a client. It was a Chrome extension when it started. If you
Oh
remember,
yeah, that's right. It was a Chrome
like
extension. Yeah.
there wasn't a platform. There wasn't a client
Yep.
application. It was just a Chrome extension, and we use
Yep.
it for testing APIs, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. You just test APIs. You just imagine you're in the terminal, curl, whatever. You don't need to do that. You just go up there, add the thing, add the method, add a payload if it's a post, add your query parameters to get whatever, and then boom, and you run it, and then you can save those, and then you have like an API collection, and then you could like save the file to your repo, and then everybody could use the Postman collection. There's a bunch of different old ways to do it, and I know now they've grown from, which is it's still hard for me to make the mental shift from it's a API client / Chrome extension to like this API platform with Postman AI and there's API governance and all this other stuff they do now. It's like they went from this front end kind of thing to like this platform. And now they have this huge conference. Like it's a big conference, a big deal, which again, I kind of laugh at it every time, but it's like respect. Like,
It
actually, maybe it's a little overkill with some of the people they invite to that, but I don't know.
So yes, it was a couple of days. One was for training. I didn't attend that. Then there was the keynote day, which was a full day of conferences, like talks and whatnot. Like any tech conference, the first half of the day is all about like the announcements and like
Right.
keynote speakers, and then there's a bunch of lighting talks across 3 different tracks. And then I actually found interesting that they brought Trevor Noah for a conversation at the last piece, which usually, I mean, you have been in this conference, usually everybody's gone by then, but it's
Yeah.
actually a very good way to bring people back. And actually the talk before that one was also on the main stage, and we're going to talk about it, which was very interesting about like API, like it was a panel. So that was good. And then there was an after party, which I didn't go, and T-Pain was there, and people were very excited about it. I'm ambivalent to it. I'm a developer.
Oh man!
The
I see.
story,
This is sorry. I gotta interrupt. This is the
go.
thing. I'm gonna insert my opinion, and people can crucify me for this. I don't care. it's a developer tool to develop a product and then a developer platform. It's grown. And usually developers, doesn't matter if you're a VP of engineering or a CTO or a developer manager or a team lead or whatever, usually you don't go, I'm going to go to this conference because T-Pain or I don't name some celebrity. I don't know. Like that's not like, I'm going to say it. I guarantee you that was a sales guy's idea and
or marketing.
Yeah, sales or marketing, like the all-star college football player who then couldn't make it, got a bachelor's in economics, and now he's in sales. And like, I'm stuck with these developers. So I want to have the cool guys on that I know. I don't know. Like I'm being cynical. I'm sorry, but like, I can't wrap my head around that.
And I gotta tell our viewers and listeners, if you feel identified by that description, then the rest of all the episodes in this podcast, they're not for you. Like, we don't make content for you. We make content for developers and introverted people. And I mean, you could be extroverted and still be a developer, but you don't really care about those things. So I mean, there was budget, man. Like it's
yeah,
as you said, it's a tool that came out of a necessity, which was like quickly testing APIs. The founders, they talk a little bit about their story. They were working at Yahoo in some service, and then at some point they were building a front end for a set of APIs, and they just couldn't find a way to test those APIs. Right? They were probably doing orchestration, things like that. So they came up with this Chrome extension, and then it started to grow and grow and grow, and they have a ton of features. Nowadays, there's still the Chrome extension. You can do it all online. There's a VS Code extension. So it's grown. It's enterprisey. There are some things that are cool, especially around like secrets and keys. There was also the Postman collection file. When you exported it, it was all plain text, right? Like, there are some security things that I think it's worth doing it. Now they have this whole ecosystem about public APIs, right? Like, and they actually give awards and stuff like that. Yeah. For like I think the Salesforce API is one of the most popular, which somebody from Salesforce was there, was very proud about it. I wouldn't be like, I don't know. The Salesforce API
is awful. It's like there's SOAP and then there's Salesforce APIs, and they're low on the totem pole.
And then we come to the 21st century, right? Like,
yeah, right, like, exactly. Oh.
Conversations about WebSockets, conversation about GraphQL, like they added a bunch of support. It's also a tool that everybody uses it. And now, like, I think I'm a little bit jealous in that area because they figure out the model to become popular and they charge for it. Very similar to Docker, very similar to, I don't think Vercel falls exactly in that category, but there are those tools that are like really, that the developers will go and complain to their managers in every company size. It doesn't matter if it's like a 5-people company or like 10,000, right? Like they created something that we as developers want. And that's a very easy sell for a sales team, right? Like that justifies bringing T-Pain. I don't know. But anyhow, so that's my take. Like, I'm a little bit of jealous of those developer tools that are so successful because I was there. I saw it being created. I was working with APIs back then. I never saw the opportunity to build it. And it's one of those like, man, if only, right? Like, because we're talking about like early 2010s. I think that's when it was released. But I mean, other than that, other than the events that I was telling you, there was a lot of development focus, a very technical conference, which I haven't been in one of those in a while. And I really enjoy my time there.
That's good. That's really interesting. Like, I actually, after reading about it, I'm not a conference person, but it actually sounded kind of interesting. But before we get into like what Postman talked about, because there's always like the product part of the conference, right? I'm curious about like the experience. Like, okay, it's a developer conference, but clearly it's it's funded not by the developers. And so what is that experience like? So never won the cheap paint stuff and all that. Like what you get there, is it like a React conference? Is it more like a Amazon, like AWS? And I'm talking about like the experience part, like the what was there, what was cool. I mean, clearly you got cool swag, so there's that.
Yeah. Okay. So it was not like React. It was less developer-y, if that's a
Mhm.
word. But it wasn't a business conference for a tech company either, right? Like it was somewhere
Okay.
in between.
Okay.
I actually like they had like little things that just made me realize that they do care about developers having fun in their conference, right? There was an arcade, an actual game, like a full arcade. You can actually play, and it was a game around like APIs. I think I have a photo somewhere, and I'll probably post it.
A game around APIs. So like, yeah, like an arcade, they had an arcade box and there was a game and what? Okay. You have to like, when we post this, you have to post pictures of it. That sounds
Yeah, let me
crazy.
see if
That's really cool.
it was that one was like, and you can tell like if they invested on that thing, I'm gonna send it to you and then we're gonna post it. But at least you can. It's called the API First Journey.
Yeah. Okay.
Rick, it's going your way. All right, so there was like a few of those arcades in there, and it was like very simple. It was the stick and one button, and that was about it. So very cool. I got a graphic novel that talks about API, a little bit geeky, a little bit playful. It was interesting. Again, focus on developers. Um, there was a coffee bar, and I would say bars because there were a few where you could actually get decent coffee. You know, all these conferences, I mean, it doesn't matter how good the brand of the coffee is. It's probably already burned and it's the same and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. No, they actually have coffee bars spread across the place and you can get a latte or you can get espresso or things like that. It was really good. So
That's cool.
I thought it was great. What else? Oh, they have a swag shop, right? So I got the hoodie that was included with the conference, and then there was some Postman swag. But you could also buy stuff like pens and notebooks and plushes, and like there was stuff that you could buy. That was interesting because like it kind of like feels like they still gotta sell some swag to support the company, which is what they were doing a while ago. I don't know. I thought it was like a nice thing, and they were selling stuff. Like they were giving away a lot of like the swag, but they were also selling, and there was people buying. And I might or might not have bought a few, maybe a notebook and maybe pens and stuff like that. But it was cool. Like I don't know. It's just developer vibes in that conference. That was good.
That's cool. Yeah, I just pulled up their Postman swag merchant thing. I really like it. That graphic novel looks really cool. You can tell that they have good design taste and stuff. I like it. Very sharp. The hoodie looks fantastic.
The hoodie was good. The whole colors like purple and orange and the you know I'm a font aficionado where I like the font choices were good, readable. I don't know. It's just very well made conference. I don't know. The experience was good. I was enjoying. I was learning. I wasn't falling asleep. Like I was like there was things to. Anyhow, I just have a very good time regardless of celebrities and whatnot.
Right. Yeah. Oh, cool. Okay. Well, I'm jealous of the swag. That's interesting. So they had a couple unique things I'd never heard before. A graphic novel and arcade. That's kind of cool. All right. So let's talk about the announcement. So I know they announced Postman 11. I have no idea what's in it other than I know they mentioned a bunch of AI stuff. I literally just scanned through the blog posts in about 15 seconds to just try to get the headlines. Like so that's about as far as and then I saw something about a new VS Code extension. I think I've used their old one before, which by the way, doesn't work with Cursor. the old one at least, because I tried to use it and it doesn't work with cursor, and I don't know why. Usually a cursor is just a fork of VS Code, and almost every extension works. So I don't know why that one doesn't. But anyway, I digress. So Postman 11, what's the highlights there?
AI. They
Of
graduated the
course,
VS. Yes,
of course,
that was yeah, that was
Postman AI.
they so main things on Postman 11, they have a package library, right? So think part of the evolution of Postman was your ability to test API contracts, right? And write some scripts to test the stuff based on Node, right? On JavaScript. So they built like a package manager, a package library that basically you can have your own test for a given API and reuse a bunch of stuff. So a lot of like avoiding the dry principle, don't repeat yourself in there. The VS Code extension graduated from beta to GA. So maybe you want to try it now, and maybe it works with Cursor now. So maybe that's it. This is not particular for me, but maybe it's of interest to you. You have an API, you expose an API in some of the projects that you do. They announced this multi-partner workspace, which is like you want to share a workspace with your APIs and you want to post updates and stuff like that, but you have multiple partners, right? And you can see them, but they cannot see each other. So it's all like a cloud-based sharing solution.
Got it.
Very good, right?
That's actually useful. Yeah.
Yes. For my day work, like we're looking at like, hey, how do we leverage this? Because it's pretty cool. Because I want to get like developer portals are cool for APIs, but if you can just get like at the end of the day, a developer is just going to export the Open API spec and he's going to put it into Postman. So if you can go straight to Postman, then that's it. So partner workspaces. Let me see what else. And that's pretty much the gist of it, I would say. That was Postman 11.
Okay, yeah, that's the new version. Okay, so the package thing. So that's basically you package up like a collection of APIs, and someone else can install it into their.
No, you package your tests, your scripts, right? Like right now, there was no way for you to share scripts. Like, no, for your APIs, you kind of like want to share collections or you have workspaces and things like that. This is more for the JavaScript code, and like it's just an NPM like package manager built like very lightweight with the I think they have like a PM package that it is built into everything that you use to test responses. So it's just a way for you to avoid repeating yourself in every single API call that you're writing tests against.
Got it. Okay. All right. So before we continue on, I just have a question. So I have used Paul, which was a Mac app that's a REST client. I've used it for years, and then Rapid API bought it, and they changed the beautiful Paul logo to that ugly logo that Rapid API has. But I mean, it still works the same, but I still can't figure out how to use Rapid API. I tried like terrible, like Postman makes a little more sense. So should I switch to Postman? It's now a good time to do that.
So I have used Paw as well, and I missed it very much for the same reasons as you. I think kind of like the essence of Paw is disappearing. It's still not a Mac client, and you know how much I love Mac apps that behave like Mac apps. So it is a change, and it is an Electron app, maybe the Postman client. I don't know. It's like I'll give it a try, like especially for those extra features. For just like testing APIs, I mean, you probably are good with Paw, right? With the new version of Paw. But any of those other features, I think that would be good. I did ask them about the code extension, like so the VS Code extension, and how much feature parity it had with the main client, and there is still not 100%. So they're calling it GA because it's kind of like fully usable, and they consider it like a completed version 1, but it's not a one-to-one parity with the client API. And I think that's important to know, right?
That's interesting.
I'll give it a try. I think Electron apps are better, getting better every day. But it's never going to be the native Mac experience that you would expect.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's not a huge deal with that kind of thing, in my opinion, with that type of app. But there is an extra shine on it or whatever, for sure. I'll check out the VS Code extension. I'm interested in seeing how far that's gone and stuff. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. So AI.
So
what was their shtick? Because everybody's got their shtick. What's theirs?
They call it PostBot, right? So Postman, PostBot, right? PostBot AI.
Yeah.
And I think it's included even with the free accounts. And it's basically on the bottom right, like you can pop it up. It is context aware of what Postman can do, right? So it's helpful for some of these things, like testing the API, like designing the contracts, like helping you with some of that. It's just a chat interface too, where you can, like, very similar to Copilot chat, right? But it's more context aware. I did ask them, like, hey, if I'm using the VS Code extension, do I get Postbot? And they were like, no, it's not quite there yet. So that's one of the things that it is different. But I was curious to see, like, how a developer will kind of like choose between Postbot and Copilot if you're in the same IDE with the extension. They say that Postbot is more content aware of what Postman can do. So that might be something, that might be a reason, but I suspect there's going to be a little bit of a clash in there. If you are using the client, the native client or the web, whatever, Electron, then you have it there. What I did like was they had this demo where they were querying some API and it returns a set of coordinates, right? So the API, I don't know, get locations, right? It returns like a pagination of that. You can ask the bot to visualize that in a map, for example. So it takes all the coordinates and it generates a map view and it's all in there. And like you can validate some of that stuff. So visualization is, you can ask it to build charts for you. Like if you are, I don't know, working with some sort of reporting API and you want to kind of like visualize some things or kind of get ideas how you can visualize that data, it is good for that. Testing, right? Hey, write me some test cases for this API. I want to validate that it returns 200 if I send this. I want to validate blah, blah, blah. So I would say those are the primary use cases, like maps, visualization, testing. It can also help you with the authentication methods, if I remember correctly. Like there was some things, like, some of the OAuth flows sometimes are a little bit like you don't know what's wrong because everything is automatically happening. So it can troubleshoot some of that. Overall, I think it has potential because if they don't try to make it a big LLM that does everything and they specialize it in Postman, I think it can be a really good, pun intended, Copilot, right, to your Postman client. And it's, as far as I know, as I said, it's free on the free version. So there is nothing stopping you from using it today.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah. I mean, I'll have to play with it and see how it works, but I have gotten a lot of leverage over like real narrow, bespoke AI copilots, if you will, like Warp. I use Warp. It's a terminal app. Like iTunes 2 or just a terminal or whatever. And Warp does a great job at just CLI commands and trying to do something. And you just hit hashtag or pound and then type what you're trying to do. And it'll give you options of what commands you should use. And you can pick it. And then it'll even do placeholders on certain flags and stuff. It's pretty cool. So
I wish I had that. Yeah. I wish I had that when I was learning. No, I mean, I use it today, but I wish I had it when I was learning Docker commands and Kubernetes commands.
Oh, yeah, right.
That was tough, right? Like, that was like, I mean, how do you change the context of a default namespace in Kubernetes? That was the strangest command ever. Right. So I use warp. I have been jumping between cursor and VS Code. Not that I want to derail us into another conversation. I have Copilot. I also have an OpenAI key for cursor. I don't like. I know you love it. Next episode you gotta sell it to me. Like I'm seeing the same thing between VS Code and cursor. I don't know. Maybe I need to learn some of the other stuff.
Then what we should do is we should do a friction log where I just open it up and show you on how it works, because there's some really cool stuff that they do that Copilot does not do.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's what I haven't used. I also have been trying, speaking of Copilot likes, you can use your Copilot key to, there is an extension to Xcode for iOS development. So you can do some of that too, and it has the chat function and whatnot. So again, we should do that. Let's table that for the next episode. On a cursor deep dive, if we want.
I like it. Yeah, that'd be fun. So, okay. So the AI stuff, that's not surprising. That's pretty on par. Like if you were to say Postman's going to come up with an AI thing and they're going to talk about the conference, that's probably what I would have guessed. So that makes sense. What else? Go ahead. You were going to say something first.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if the Postbot can do this, but I would like it to make an analysis of how, I mean, having that marketplace of APIs available, I would assume that they can train it into best practices and things like that. So I don't know if like you ask the Postbot, like, hey, like what's wrong with my API? What can I do better? And kind of like it runs the endpoints, right? It runs the authentication, blah, blah, blah. And it tells you, hey, you have some performance things here, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know if there is something that can be added later, but as it is today, really, it's an initial play just to not get lost in the AI revolution, I guess. It's more like a catch up, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Just table stakes. We have AI too. Or
Yes.
you watch it next month. Postman is going to announce some crazy, ridiculous. Postman raises $200 million on hope that AI transforms API platforms.
To bring AI revolution into API development. Here you go. That's the marketing blurb.
Clearly, that's worth a $5 billion company. Yeah. $5 billion valuation. Yeah. Right. So what else? So they're moving more into this platform stuff with AI, or with APIs and stuff. What are they talking about there at the conference with that?
So product design. So this is where friction logs comes into play, right? Like we talk a lot about like the products, the delights, the frictions, the blockers, right? I found it interesting that their measures of success of the product are still very technical, if that makes sense. They call it a time to 200 okay, right? Like that was their initial metric, and if you get that, then you're in the right podcast, right? And then they also mentioned time to delight, right? Like at what point you get like something cool out of the product. And I don't think that's related to APIs, but more like the workspaces and the collaboration and things like that.
Yeah.
But recently, I think I cannot speak for a timeline, but in the last few months or years, they started to go after a metric that they call time to integrate, which is, it's cool when you get Postman and you get your 200 okay, but it's cooler when you actually integrate something that makes sense, right? Like the project that you were working on, like they're trying to go one step forward, which I applaud that metric, that they don't just stop of like, hey, you got a 200 okay, now you know how to connect APIs, right? Like they're trying to look into the problems from your initial 200 okay to the time that you say, hey, I have a plan to integrate my application into this API or to build another API or something, right? An orchestration layer or whatever. So they call it time to integrate or time to integration. which I found it interesting. I still like the
Yeah,
200K better, but yeah.
yeah, I like that too. That's great. I mean, those are good. That makes a lot of sense. It also kind of triggers me too, honestly, just full disclosure, because I'm thinking, oh, that means if I didn't get the 200 in the right amount of time, then some CSM or somebody's getting a email trigger. Hey, you should go reach out to Rick. And oh, by the way, Rick's corporate email is this, and he's got 10 other people. That's like, oh no, I don't want to sign up. That's what's going on. But I love those metrics. That makes a lot of sense for them. A lot of sense.
They offer things like monitors, right? Something that is constantly pinging your API and like uptime, right? Like, so they offer some of that. They have a new client. I think it's in beta. It's where I got I think they had insights, right? It's basically an agent and it reports some metrics back to their client without really sending any payloads. And their idea is to kind of like measuring the API. So think about it. It looks more like a Datadog kind of, like a lightweight Datadog.
Are they getting into that space then? I guess they are.
I guess they're trying. Yeah, it's interesting. Which, again, once a company starts to expand way more than that their core niche is, it worries me because at some point I find more money selling licenses that look like Datadog than working on the API client, and then we're going to be looking for the next one. But I guess that's the cycle of any VC-backed company that needs to get into the next thing every single time. So again, we will see. I do think that they still have a great opportunity because everything that we're doing with AI, with OpenAI and all of that, it's all API based, right? Like, so they still are part of those building blocks against like the new tech, which is AI.
It's cool. All right. I like it. Interesting. All right. Anything else in closing? Any other topics that we should cover on that?
They're posting their talks on YouTube, so I'm not into a lot of details on some of those. I really like the what is API experience design. This was an interesting talk that goes like APIs and SDKs and some of those things. I also went to one around like governance, like, hey, like how do you, like, there are some industries that are heavily regulated. So there was, I would say it was interesting, that talk. And then there was a panel like right before the Trevor Noah conversation. APIs are the backbone of every company. It was somebody from Verizon, somebody from the London Stock Exchange, and somebody from Meta, right? The messaging product, which includes like WhatsApp, Messenger, and Instagram. So I mean, they're probably going to publish that, and everybody should go and watch it. I really like the fact that this guy from the London Stock Exchange was like, oh, we have been doing, and this British accent, right? So he's very proper. He's like, oh, we have been doing APIs for like 150 years. I mean, we were sending stock prices via pigeons, right? Like it was flying. So it was just amazing.
That's awesome.
Like, that's a good way to think it. Like, man, like now they're using like WebSockets and they're transmitting everything in real time. But the fact that a 300-year-old company sees itself as using APIs since like 150, that was just like perfect. Okay, I'm sold. I enjoy that conversation. I recommend it. So very interesting.
That's great. That's so funny. So digital pigeons, huh? Okay.
No, actual pigeons, works, right?
No, but I mean like now, like anytime I hit an API, I'm going to be thinking I'm sending a pigeon over the wire.
Yes, that's a good way to teach APIs for new developers. Yeah, I like it. So that was fun. And then the Trevor Noah.
I'm sorry. I've got to carry this analogy further. So
please be my guest.
You're sending the pigeon over. If it doesn't come back because a hunter shot it, what's the error message? The person back at 150 years ago writes down 404. Is that where we get 404 from? Maybe that's where the error code came from. 404. We didn't see the thing.
I
Sorry,
mean,
we could do a whole meme on this.
yeah, it's like, let me see the status codes. Let's see, what can we find? It's not a redirection, right? That's if your pigeon appears, like it's not a 300 if your pigeon appears like it was supposed to go to Paris and it went to Spain. Is it a client error or is it a server error?
And then if okay, so then you've got proxies in between, right? So then you have the codes where it's like, okay, it forwarded it over here or it moved it over here. So that's when like somebody else sends a pigeon. All right. Anyway, this is a funny analogy. I like it. I like it a lot. It makes a lot of sense.
I mean, we can use, there is a code that is 450. Do you know what that one is?
No, I don't know what that one is. What is it?
It's called block by Windows parental controls. So maybe.
Wow, that's really specific.
But yeah, but maybe if we take the Windows analogy to actual Windows, maybe.
What happened to your pigeon? Wow.
It was a 450.
It was a 450.
It was a Windows.
Oh man.
This is
so funny.
This is gonna be a 417 expectation fail. I don't know. Payload too large, precondition. I don't know. There are so many codes. We should definitely.
Oh man, that's really funny. I like it. That's a great analogy though. It's actually not even an analogy, right? He literally said pigeons were APIs, so that's cool. Anyway, I interrupted you. So you were going to talk about Trevor Noah, who was there at an API conference, which is funny to me as well. So how'd that go?
It wasn't a lot about APIs. It was about AI, right? He does comedy and he explains like, hey, comedy is something that makes you laugh, whether that's a meme, whether that's a show, whether that's a TV show or a live show, or like an AI coming up with something, right? Like, I don't think he's blind to say that if the AI makes something funny that we find funny, then that's comedy, right? But he also explains like how, like, the way that humans think, like the AI is nowhere close. I was surprised of how technical he was. Like, he was talking like a lot of terms that non-developers usually don't talk about it. So it was a very interesting conversation. I thought that from all the celebrities that I have heard talk on tech conference or like motivational speakers or like all of those, I think this was a good fit. So again, if they publish it, you should definitely watch it. He has a perspective on AI and technology and how it influences his life and how he can waste time in technology if he doesn't protect himself too. So it was good. It was worth the time to stay. And he is funny, so he made us laugh. He made laugh pretty much the entire audience. That includes both those marketing and sales folks as well as developers, right? Like, he had a few jokes in there. Again, overall, awesome day in San Francisco for PostCon 2024. I think this was the first one on presence conference since the pandemic for them, so it was kind of like a big deal. But yeah, a lot of fun.
Cool. All right. Well, that was interesting. Postman. It's amazing how that has blown up, but good for them. Very cool. All right, Cesar. Well, thanks for coming on. And I know we have a couple other episodes lined up, but I kind of want to do this cursor one with you soon. So hopefully we'll get to that real soon.
Let's do it, man. All right. Thanks, Rick.
Yep. Thanks, Cesar. See ya.